Let's start by talking about how boring these photos are. I'm going to read you a review from November of 1976. The article is titled Formalists Who Flirt with Banality by Gene Thornton of the New York Times. At first glance, the color photographs of Stephen Shore currently on view at the Museum of Modern Art strongly resemble picture postcards of unusually drab and boring Middle Western towns. Even when he photographs a picturesque city like Charleston, South Carolina, Shore ignores the beautiful old churches, houses, and gardens that have been the principal subject matter of all previous photographers of Charleston, in favor of corner filling stations and the backsides of nondescript commercial buildings. Usually, however, he avoids even the proximity of the picturesque and concentrates his attention on the kind of dismal small town where the principal sites are the drive-in movie theater, the new suburban residential section, the litter of motels, trailer camps, and truck stops on the outskirts, and the 3 or 4 story downtown commercial district. Shore does not, I hasten to add, look down on this subject matter. His photographs are as bland and uncritical as the most ardent Chamber of Commerce booster could desire. They do not praise, perhaps, but neither do they blame. In them a rosebush, a grassy backyard, a telephone pole, a view of distant mountains, a wire fence, a piece of crumpled shower curtain, a sack of onions, a tree, a street sign, and the shiny red fender of a car all have equal value. Even when Shore includes an immobilized mobile home in the same picture with the ruins of an old southern mansion, he does not seem to be making the kind of outraged statement about the decay of a culture and its values that so many photographers have made with this kind of contrast. His color is equally bland and unemphatic. Unlike the expressive and distorted color of so many magazine photographs, it is, one suspects, as close as possible to the real color of the objects photographed. In the past, when photographers wanted to be formalistic, i.e. to emphasize arrangements of shape and color at the expense of subject matter, they imitated the effects of modernist painters and sculptors. Now, however, the new photographic formalists imitate the purely photographic effects of the snapshot, the picture postcard, and the old-fashioned 8x10 stand camera. By deliberately choosing banal subject matter of no intrinsic interest, which they often frame in such a way as to further reduce any possible interest in the content, they focus the viewer's attention on the formal elements of the picture. Thus, in Shore's townscapes, one can often admire the beautifully managed intervals between telephone poles, sign standards, and the edges of buildings and trucks. Even when this is not possible, one can admire the essentially photographic color that owes nothing to the expressive distortions of painting. If all else fails, one can fall back on the fact that whatever else Shore is doing, he is not imitating painting. So that's the end of the article, and although the writer is somewhat unimpressed by these photographs, Shore must have had an appreciation for this review because I found it on his website. These images have been endlessly analyzed online, so I'm going to focus on my own experience with them, so not to repeat what's been said hundreds of times before. I used to think that Stephen Shore was trying to create beautiful photos, but many of them turned out to be ordinary. But now I think he was trying to create ordinary photos, but many of them turned out to be beautiful. Before viewing this book, there were just a handful of Shore's photos that I found interesting. The greatest of these were probably his famous billboard image, US 97, south of Klamath Falls, Oregon, July 21st, 1973. It's a beautiful scene, humorous in a way, and full of what feels like social commentary. And there are others taken in beautiful golden hour light that feel cinematic in nature. But most of them are just these everyday scenes where the most interesting thing about them is a look into life 50 years in the past. I could see why they didn't draw much critical acclaim when this was what everyday life looked like almost everywhere. When I saw that this book was in my local library, I thought I'd give it a look because it was talked about so much, and I was absolutely blown away by the photos. I had only seen the images reproduced online, which does no justice to the work at all. I hadn't even realized he was using an 8x10 view camera to create these photographs. If you're not familiar with cameras, that means he was using one of those old-fashioned looking cameras with the billows and the cloth that the photographer goes underneath to compose and focus the image. What makes these cameras special is that the negative is nearly 60 times larger than a frame of 35mm film. And that translates into a level of detail you could never imagine by simply looking at your parents' or grandparents' snapshots from the 1970s. Here's what Shore said about his choice of using this camera. Quote, "I discovered that this camera was the technical means in photography of communicating what the world looks like in a state of heightened awareness. And it's that awareness of really looking at the everyday world with clear and focused attention that I'm interested in." Seeing this book completely changed my outlook on this set of images. Everything is so sharp and crisp with such accurate color representation that I feel like I'm there with Shore looking at this scene in real time. Signs in the distance are readable. Raindrops on cars are distinguishable from each other. Whatever minute detail I want to take a closer look at, I can, because everything in the scene is sharp. Nothing is subject to the photographer's selective focus. Most photographers, when looking to create an interesting image outdoors, lean towards photographing in the golden hours, those times just after sunrise and just before sunset, where the world is enriched by long shadows and a golden hue. But Shore was taking photos, it seems, where he was at the time he was there. Many of the photos are taken midday in average light. And if an image is at golden hour, it feels like that's just the time he happened to be there in that place, not an actual concerted effort to romanticize a scene. Even if that's the case, I must admit that these golden hour photos are often my favorites, which makes me feel like I'm being superficial in a way, but that's my own problem to deal with. I can see how easy it would have been to dismiss these images in the era they were taken. One just had to walk outside to see these scenes. But 50 years after they were created, we get an amazingly detailed look into a world many of us never witnessed. Uncommon Places by Stephen Shore is the closest thing I've experienced to time travel. After checking this book out from my local library twice for a month at a time, I decided I needed to have it in my own collection. So thanks to the publisher Aperture for sending me this copy to review and discuss with you all and to have in my own collection. Check out my photo books playlist for more content like this and leave a comment with your favorite photographers and photo books, and I'll see if I can get their books in hand to discuss them with you.